everybody. We're live at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm Jules Suzdaltsev. I'm here with John Idarola from the Young Turks.
How's it going?
Thanks for joining us.
Anytime.
So, what are your thoughts so far on the convention as it's been going?
Well, this is the first convention I've ever been to, and we have to understand that we're filming this on the first day. And traditionally, the conventions will ramp up in excitement and also the amount of media attention they get. As you go into the third and fourth day, that's when the vice presidential candidate will speak, the presidential candidate. And so I expect that there will be more excitement at that point. It's more of just build-up right now. But aside from the delegates, which I haven't really seen too much of, the outside of the convention hall, there is a lot of excitement, both in terms of protests, sanctioned and unsanctioned. There are vague security threats that a lot of people are worried about, groups coming in and talking about they're doing open carry. And so there's excitement, not necessarily of the sort that we usually get during conventions.
Absolutely. There's so much security here. There's so many Secret Service agents. It's a little overwhelming, but actually everybody is really nice, and it seems like they really have it figured out. There's a good sense of both professionalism, but it's also a little loose.
Yeah, look, I think considering the context of the past year, both in terms of the recent shootings involving police in Baton Rouge and in Dallas, but also the number of violent incidents that we've had at Donald Trump's rallies leading up to this, I am for them going overboard rather than taking chances. We already had the hall was emptied once for a suspicious package.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing.
I think so too, and it's just nice to have that sort of, both the security, but then the efficiency too. It doesn't feel like slowed down by bureaucracy, and personally for the RNC that feels, or any national convention that feels like, like it would be more uptight, but it's pretty nice. Have you had a chance to go around the convention site at all, check out Cleveland at all?
Not especially around the convention site. I've been around a little bit of Cleveland. We had a fan meetup for the Young Turks. And it actually, while we're far away from the East Coast, Cleveland reminds me a lot of some of the East Coast cities that I grew up in. The people are super friendly so far, both the fans and just the people we've come across. And while it's insanely hot and humid here, it's a nice, not too big city. First time in Cleveland, but I'm liking it so far.
Same. It is also my first time in Cleveland, and exactly the same. It's super. It's a really interesting vibe. I didn't expect this from Cleveland. I expected Cleveland to be maybe a little louder, I would say.
I thought it'd be a bit more like Chicago.
Yeah, I think
very different than from San Francisco, where you're based out of.
Definitely very different from San Francisco. A lot of new things happening around me. But very, very cool. I love where we've stayed. And it's pretty cool that the convention is in Cleveland, because this isn't the first time that the Republican National Convention has been in Cleveland. It's the third time. And, Ohio is a huge swing state. That doesn't, it's not super surprising, but it's pretty cool. The first one was 1924. The next one was 1936. And a lot has changed since then. It's pretty interesting how the role of conventions has changed in general. It used to be a bunch of old white guys with cigars would crowd up in a room and talk about, who do they want as their nominee, and there would be all these backroom deals and all these secret shady things going on. Shady negotiations.
Yeah, there's not no cigars anymore. There's still old white men, but now they're vaping.
That's actually they banned e-cigarettes from the inside of the convention. I noticed that specifically.
Yeah.
But yeah, like e-cigarettes, so much has changed, and I think one of the biggest things is that the purpose of the convention has changed. Because originally it was, to choose the nominee, to set the platform, and to establish the rules for the next election cycle. But choosing the nominee it's a completely different system now. Instead of it being all these backroom dealings, we have primaries and caucuses. And so, everybody, by the end of the primary season, everybody knows who the nominee is going to be. That's been that way since the 1970s, when every state basically had taken on a caucus or a primary system.
Yeah.
And I think the last time that it was even questionable was was in 1976 between Ronald Reagan and Gerald Ford, where it was too close to call. I believe neither of them had reached the 1,237 delegates necessary. And so it was I don't remember if it was actually a contested convention. I believe at the end.
I think it was more of a theoretically contested convention.
Yeah, but it was so close, and it's never been that close since then.
Well, it's one of the reasons that we had so much excitement in the media in the Republican primary leading up to today,
Yeah.
because it seemed for a while like we might finally have some actual drama, some important decisions being made at the convention hall.
Yeah.
We mostly avoided that, although there was a bit of drama from the Never Trump group today. It doesn't look like it's amounted to anything yet.
It seems like it's still going to be a fairly calm day, and I think that's super interesting. Also, like Trump is a really big example of how political elites don't control who becomes the nominee anymore, because there's been a huge outcry against Trump the entirety of his campaign, and the Republican voters have definitively spoken for who they want as their nominee, and there's nothing that anyone higher up has really been able to do or maybe wanted to do, but it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think on that, so we know who the nominee is going to be when we're coming into the convention.
Yeah.
So it kind of begs the question, why are we at the convention? Why are there 2,500 delegates, I think 50,000 attendees, 15,000 media people?
Yeah.
It seems like a lot for when we know what the solution is or what the answer is.
Yeah, and so the reason for gathering is very different than it was historically, but there are at least two good reasons that they still do it. The smaller, less important of the two reasons is it's a massive amount of basically free media for your party, for your candidate. It puts the eyes of the country on your party for 4 to 7 days, depending on how much drama is expected. Right. And that's worth something. It both gives your candidate and the VP candidate a lot of exposure, but also in the instances in which you have sort of the up-and-coming stars of the party, it gives a huge spotlight on them. I mean, that's where Barack Obama basically saw his national launch into the spotlight, was at the 2004 convention. And so even if there's no doubt about who's going to be the nominee, the amount of attention on the speeches and the platform is valuable. And that's the second reason, really, is the platform. And so while it's easy to laugh at the platform as a sort of outdated listing of the priorities of the party, getting together thousands of delegates, and especially the Leadership Council, to agree on the priorities of the party, to put it together in a document that people can refer back to, that's important. And it's non-binding. They don't have to actually act on
I think that's what's kind of amazing is that it's a really big deal is made of the platform. And by the way, I love that the individual parts of the platform are called planks.
I know, yes.
I just, that's so cutesy for a political idea.
It's silly, but I want as much pirate as I can get
I'm so into it. RNC.
Exactly, yeah.
But so, it is interesting that it's non-binding because of how much attention is placed on it.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of fascinating. But we were talking a little earlier, and you told me something I didn't know, which is most of the things that are promised, even though they are non-binding, go through, right?
Yeah, and so I was reading up on the political science research that's been done on party primaries, the presidential primaries, especially. The state platforms are less important, and they generally, like if you ever read your state platform, they're just wish lists of crazy extremist policies. But the presidential platform generally is a more moderate document. It's more attainable goals. And political scientists have found that over the past 3 decades, depending on which party you're talking about, the Republican Party generally acts on stated promises about 90% of the time, 90% of the promises. Democratic Party is a little bit lower, below 80%. But that's still significant, and it means that you can read that platform and get an idea for what the priorities of the party actually will be. Mm-hmm. And if you'd like just a few examples, the platform is still being worked on the Republican side. That's actually one of the first things that will be accomplished in the first and second days is finalizing it. But there are things like overturning gay marriage, allowing for conversion therapy for parents of gay youths across the country again, changing up the energy goals of the country. They've described coal as clean energy in their platform. There's definitely a move towards more tax cuts. They talk a lot about the economic stimulus they think will come from both making permanent previous tax cuts, instituting new ones, banning women from combat roles in the military, pushing for a balanced budget. And also, I think very interestingly, repealing Glass-Steagall, which is also in the Democratic platform, although it's not something that Hillary Clinton has pushed for. So you see that in both parties right now.
What's really interesting about that is that not only is Clinton a little bit at odds with her platform, but this platform is pretty at odds with Trump, because Trump,
in a lot of ways,
he doesn't have a lot of really distinct policy positions. He kind of seems to say the things he thinks, and that becomes his policy. And I've actually noticed in some of the talk on policy, it looks like you're using just clips from something he kind of said in his speech and have introduced that as a policy platform. but I was reading that quite a bit of the platform isn't really in line with. Like I know Trump has said that he's not that interested in overturning gay marriage. That the people voted.
He's not as LGBT unfriendly as a lot of past candidates. Certainly not as much as the platform is. You know, there are a couple areas of the platform that do basically toe the Trump line. First of all, the language. It's all American exceptionalism, make America great again. So his rhetoric is there, but also building a border wall, banning immigration from countries that are associated with terrorism.
Yeah.
Those are two of his biggest policy priorities. They're there. And while it doesn't go as far on being against trade deals as he's been in some of the debates recently, it is a more anti-trade platform than the Republicans have had in quite a few decades.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. And so that happens, you're saying, within the first couple of days, right?
Yeah.
This is a 4-day convention. You know, in the beginning, the first 2 days seem a little bit looser than the next two. You know, what happens during those days?
Well, in the first 2 days, you're going to have a lot of speakers. They are the less high-profile speakers, at least at this convention, although we expect Michelle Obama on the first day of the Democratic convention. But then there's also, it's not just about choosing the president. This is the biggest gathering of the party that you'll have for 4 years. And so they take care of a lot of routine party business. As you said earlier, they have to lay out at least some of the broad strokes of how the presidential election will go for the party in the next 4 years. And that will be fine-tuned over the course of a few years, but the base is set here. You have thousands of delegates. They have to be checked in, make sure that they're the people they say they are. There's going to be various votes that they're going to be involved in. And then you have, as I said, the formal adoption of the actual platform, the finalized platform.
So it's a lot of seemingly procedural things that sort of establish the base. What are we going to do next year? What are we going to do this year?
Yeah. Now days 3 and 4 get a little bit more exciting, though, right?
Yeah. Well, my favorite thing, I love day 3. That is the day that all the states really. It's called a roll call. It's actually specifically called a rolling roll call of the states, which is really fun to say, where every state and all the territories will give up. Well, first they'll say something very nice about their state, which I learned is called boosterism, which is really another fun word for boosting your own state. And then and it always goes alphabetically. It goes Alabama first, Wyoming last. And so every state spokesperson will stand up, say something really nice about their state. Then they'll announce their delegate count or pass, in which case it'll come back around to them. But I think what's super interesting is, for as much sort of pomp and circumstance that goes with it, we know all the delegates, we know who's going to win. And realistically, that kind of leaves, it really becomes a ceremonial practice.
As silly as it is, I still like that part of it, though. I mean, unfortunately, it's not going to be like the most recent season of House of Cards. It's not that exciting, but it's so old-timey. It's like politics of a previous century. Yeah. And we very rarely see a big gathering of state pride on display for multiple states. And it's the boosterism is endearing, I think.
I agree.
It reminds us that while we are a country and we are unified, we have our own culture and we have our own way of doing things state to state. And it's nice to see that on display, at least in some form.
By the way, I love that, and maybe this is obvious, but it's, like I said, it's not just the states, it's the territories too. And we went down to the floor yesterday, and I just remember being caught so off guard by seeing, a completely, exactly like all the rest of them, a stand for the Northern Marshall Islands.
Yeah,
I was kind of like, wow, I have not heard about them for so long, but of course here they are, and they're represented, and they get to be a part of the nomination process, which I think is super cool. A lot of times they get cut out of everything.
Yeah, American Samoa and those sorts of things. There's Puerto Rico, it's walled off from the rest, but they allowed them in the building, which is nice. They didn't actually do that.
So that's day 3. That's the roll call. At the end of that, that ends with everybody being officially knowing Trump is in.
Yes.
The 4th day is the one I think I'm actually most excited for. That's the biggest speeches. That's the last day, and that's when we get to hear what Trump has to say, which he said that, I believe he said this about the last convention, it was the single most boring convention he had ever seen, and he plans to bring some showbiz to this one. The guy is full of surprises, and I am so excited to see what showbiz he brings.
We got a sample of it before the convention. It had been announced that he wanted to fly in on a helicopter. which is actually kind of a cool idea. They're not going to do that. I'm thinking maybe he rides in on a tiger. I'm not sure.
That would be very, very Trump.
Yeah, but I do think that his speech will be incredibly consequential because we're going to have to see, does he do one of his normal rambling 45-minute speeches of whatever pops into his head, or does he do a teleprompter, scripted speech? He's had very few of those so far. That would signal something if he were to do that, and if he were to lay out specifics. I'm not expecting that he's going to do that, but there is the chance that he will.
I've noticed, and I've read this around, that in the last few months, his rhetoric has calmed down a little. Maybe not the substance, but the way he's delivering it. He's still giving fiery speeches, but I believe just after he let go of his campaign manager, he took on what has been described as, I think, a more presidential presence, which is maybe a little strange to see from Trump. It's again a little unexpected.
There has been a movement that I've noticed, and I especially gave him credit in the wake of the police shooting the ambush in Dallas. He didn't take advantage of it the way that you might have predicted based on his earlier behavior. However, after Baton Rouge, he says that Obama has blood on his hands and that he's leading a war on the cops. He says that Obama is supporting Islamic terrorism. He was recently in a lot of trouble for claiming that a judge of Hispanic descent couldn't be objective in a case involving Trump. And so there's still reason to believe that he is not fully capable of reeling it all in, but he does seem to be trying.
No, I'm sure that the deep down beliefs, the basic fuel that he's running on is still the same. But I think his delivery has become a little more subdued. So I am also super curious to see what kind of speech this is. Also, really fast, super important, he is going to be, and I don't think this is generally the way it's done, he's going to be introducing some of the other speakers throughout the week. So I've heard that he's going to be introducing Melania tonight. It's also expected that he's going to introduce his VP candidate, Pence, on Thursday. And so those are probably not likely to be scripted. And so maybe we'll get a taste of the old Trump during those introduction speeches. Totally. Actually, speaking of which, I actually saw a tweet that you did a little earlier that you said you weren't that excited about seeing the speeches today. But who are you excited about?
I'm excited about some. Look, honestly, I'm a little bit excited about seeing Melania Trump speak. We've had almost no exposure of her, and she is one of the people who, for better or worse, knows Trump best at this point. And look, I fully expect that her speech is going to be incredibly tightly controlled, but maybe she will attempt to humanize her husband. Maybe she'll even be capable of doing that. And so I'm interested to see her. There's some B actors from the 80s that they've got on display that I think Antonio Sabato Jr. is going to be here. Scott Baio.
I heard Scott Baio. That was that was all over Twitter. I feel like that came so out of left field. Who knew Scott Baio was?
Yeah, look, he was great in Arrested Development. Maybe he'll be great at the convention. And I'm honestly actually excited to see Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz has been an interesting character after he dropped out of the race. He's sort of endorsed Donald Trump, but not really. So is he actually going to lay out why Trump should be president, or is he simply going to boost conservatism generally? And he's a relatively serious guy in this bunch, and so I think that's a speech to watch.
I think that's actually super interesting that Ted Cruz is speaking because of how many people have outright refused to speak or even come to the convention at all. I saw that Mitt Romney, John McCain, and both of the living Bush presidents or former presidents have refused to come. I don't know if that's still true, if they're going to hold to that. But
I don't think Mitt Romney's going to be here.
I've yet to see Mitt Romney
after their
here.
little fights. But not having living presidents of your party speak out for you, that's not the way things generally happen in this country.
But it's also so on message for the Republican Party right now,
well, especially with Trump. Yeah,
exactly. With Trump, where the highest level establishment still seems even reluctant to accept him as the nominee, even though you walk around the convention hall and it's Trump Pence flyers everywhere. Which is another really hilarious thing for the convention where they're supposed to choose the nominee.
That is clearly already chosen.
It's another fun little relic.
And importantly, we don't have John Kasich expected to speak. Now, he's the governor of the state the convention is in. He's a relatively high-profile Republican because of his relative success during the primary. And this is a swing state. You'd want the governor to speak for you, but he is not having it. He's not endorsing Trump as of right now.
I mean, that's a huge deal. I brought this up a little earlier, but Ohio as a swing state is it's gigantic. It's tremendous.
It's super important,
we looked this up last night. It was the last 13 elections have been called by whoever won Ohio in the
During the general election.
during the general election.
Yeah.
And I think it was, I might get the number here wrong, but since 1904, 25 of the 27 elections have gone where Ohio has voted for the whoever it is, have gone to that person.
Yeah.
Just amazing. I also heard a couple of funny little ones where I'll have to look it up, but Arizona Senator Jeff Flake said that he wouldn't be coming because he was busy mowing his lawn.
You gotta keep ahead of it, man. If you let that thing get overgrown, your property value dips.
Exactly. That's way more important than trying to make it to the convention.
Yeah.
But we'll be here. That's a fact.
Yes,
We'll be here for the rest of the week. We have another one of these lined up a little later.
And more videos.
Should be super, super cool. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah. I'm hoping to have you on the Young Turks as well to do some live coverage of the speeches and things like that.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, thank you so much for coming on to
Anytime.
join
Love
us.
the network. Yeah. And of course, if you'd like to see more of me and the company I work for, the Young Turks, we're going to be doing a live show at 6 p.m. Local time, Eastern time tonight and throughout the convention, and then also live coverage after 8 p.m. of the speeches as they happen.
Cool. And
YouTube.com/The Young Turks. Sorry.
Definitely make sure to watch the Young Turks. They're fantastic.
Thank
and
you.
make sure to tune in every day at 4 p.m. during the length of the convention, because we're going to be doing live streams, again, like I said, with John. And they should be great.
Yeah.
Right? Well, anyway, man, thanks
Very
so much
excited to be here.
Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.